Hi, everyone. So thanks for being here today. I'm Andrea. I'm on the marketing team, and we're super excited today to talk about how to use Notion for design work. And I've personally interviewed a lot of customers to learn how their design teams use Notion. So really pumped to share some of the tips and tricks that we've learned over the course of those interviews. And Corey, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, hello, I'm Corey. That picture is of me when I had longer hair, and it is actually me, I promise. Little different now. I have worked at a bunch of different places as a designer throughout my career. I started off at a small boutique design studio where we did a lot of branding and websites, things like that. And after that, I was a freelancer for a while, had a bunch of clients. I worked at the Wall Street Journal for 4 years, designing the Wall Street Journal website, the apps, design systems, brand. And now I am very happy to be here at Notion, where I'm working on marketing, so brand, the Notion website, and a lot of the templates that you would use in the product. And excited to talk about how you'd use Notion for design.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have Corey here personally as my co-pilot here. He's much more qualified than I am to talk about this stuff. And yeah, Corey, that doesn't look like you at all, but yeah, we all look very different now.
Yeah, even the glasses are different, so it's like,
Yeah.
just pretend.
And yeah, I think Corey's being very humble. He's worked at like all different types of design in all different types of design environments. He's worked at an agency, freelance, in-house at major brands, and then now for Notion, which is we're growing really fast for a startup. So he really understands the needs of designers in all kinds of situations. So yeah, we're very lucky to have him here today. Cool. So if you don't know what Notion is, by the way, and you're new to us, just wanted to explain a little bit. We are an all-in-one workspace for docs, wikis, and tasks and team collaboration. And there's lots of work productivity tools out there right now. It's pretty buzzy, and so you might be wondering, okay, how is Notion different from all the other ones? We like to say we're different because one, we try to consolidate all of those tools into one workspace, and we give you the ability to create highly customized workflows. So that's what we're going to do today, specifically for design teams to work better together, and hopefully it'll upgrade whatever setup you have right now. And it's really applicable to all kinds of design work. So if you're a graphic designer or a product designer or a creative lead, or you work at a brand agency, it's really meant for anyone involved with design work. Cool. So let's move on. Yeah, and Corey and I want to jump straight into the demos. So we're going to just run through a little bit of intro at the beginning, but we really want to skip all the fluffy stuff because we definitely respect our audience. We know you guys know that there's a couple of key things that really up-level the design team. So I think these three things here up on the screen: a holistic and consistent design system, communicating really well with product and engineering and other teams, and then also quick iterations are pretty key. I think those things have all been said before and are pretty well known. But what's often not talked about is what actual workflows you can set up to achieve these goals well and what's blocking people from doing so. And Corey, I know you have firsthand experience with this, obviously. So do you want to talk a little bit about what are the barriers to achieving this?
Yeah, totally. So there's three main pain points that I've observed over and over again everywhere I've worked. The first one is just the asset management problem, right? So there's logos and fonts everywhere, and we've all probably gotten a Slack message like this, hey, Corey, can you send me the latest logo? And I love Nate, he's on the marketing team here, and I'd love to send him the logo, but I can't do this if everyone in the company is sending me this message 10 times a day. So there's really a need to house all of the assets in a centralized location. And through that, ideally, different teams around the company would be able to self-serve. And whenever they need a logo, they'd be able to find it for themselves. And the second pain point is just managing iterations and feedback. So design is obviously a very iterative process, and to get to a good outcome, you have to go through lots of rounds and revisions, and it can be hard to keep track. So often you'll have this huge Google Drive folder with files scattered all over the place in different folders with different teams, and there'll be V2, V4, and it's really challenging to see the full history of everything that's happened and all the decisions that have been made. And it's even more difficult if a stakeholder like a CEO comes in at the end and has a question about why we arrived at a certain design decision and then isn't able to see the reasoning. So the third pain point is keeping all the teams in sync, and especially design and engineering teams, because anything the design team designs is only going to be as good as the final thing that's built. So what will often happen is everyone will be tracking their tasks independently in different tools. And here the engineering team is using Jira, which is a common tool for tracking engineering tickets. And design team is using Trello. And it just doesn't make sense, right? We have these two Kanban boards. Why are they in separate tools? And it's, if you want to associate a design project with an engineering task, you now have to copy paste a link, and the link might be broken. And it would just be a lot better if these were all in one place. And on top of that, we're all working remotely currently, and it's even more important and it's even more challenging to keep everything in sync and working together. So we're really excited to share some workflows that address these problems, especially collaboration and just working as a cohesive design team.
Cool, thanks, Corey. Yeah, I think we can all relate to those pain points, and it really like affects the entire team, not just the design team. So cool, let's jump straight into the demo. Today we're going to show you 5 different workflows, and we're going to go through them pretty fast, but hopefully it gives you a good overview of what you can do to help your design team just run more efficiently. So the first one is your design wiki with important reference docs. And the reason we have this first is that it's really a framing for the other 4 that we're going to walk through. It's like your home base for the other 4 workflows. So you really want to return here and house all of any type of work that's related to your team in this wiki. Then the second one is a design system with your brand assets that you can use to help people on other teams self-serve and also help the design team stay more consistent with your style. And then project docs that are specific to design, like specs and kickoffs, and also tasks that are also specific to design. So we'll show you some templates for that. And then finally, sharing public resources and client work, because we know that a lot of you in the audience work at agencies and have to deal with users and clients on in a public relationship. So cool. That's what we're going to go through today. And let's jump into the design wiki. So you have this age-old problem with lots of design teams where you just have so many assets to keep track of. And you may have your logos and your fonts and your colors, and then you have different versions of those and you need to make updates to them. So there's just so many things to keep track of. And products like Figma have solved a lot of this, but there's still other things besides actual graphics that you need to keep organized, right? So as you can see here, there's process docs that you can add, like your guides, you can add your mission statement, you can even put the people who are on your team so that other teams know who to reach out to if they have questions. Of course, all of your assets can live here. You can even put, maybe like landing page experiments that you're doing. And then, inspiration, like a swipe file or a scratch pad. And then things that are internal to the design team, right? So it's really a mix of important docs that other teams need to use and reference, plus the design team's day-to-day work. And then I just want to mention too that, this kind of centralized wiki, it starts to make a really big difference when you have multiple teams and hundreds of people accessing the same information. And that's when something like single sign-on becomes a major advantage that you'd want to pair with this type of wiki, just so you can manage provisioning and access at scale. So if that's something that you need, definitely take a look at our enterprise plan. I just wanted to mention that because that's a main part of the plan. Cool. And then let's look at a couple of these docs. So if we go into design principles, for example, this is one example of like a process doc that you'd include in the wiki, right? And I'm sure most of you know what design principles are. They're like rules to live by for the entire design team. But the great thing about Notion is that if you keep it in here in this wiki, then it's always up to date. People can comment and add ideas. this example is from Dieter 10 Principles of Good Design. I have it linked up here, but you really want to personalize it for your team because it helps to codify what your design ethos is and your approach to design. You can add things like images to set examples for what you mean by these principles. Like, I
It's
love this.
a nice watering can.
Yeah, it's useless. I found this artist who just like created a bunch of useless products. So yeah, like it makes sense for this one, right? Yeah, so this is just like one example of how you can start to achieve what we're calling like this holistic design system. So let's go back to the wiki. And yeah, like, this wiki is helpful for someone even like me in marketing. If I need a logo or a slide deck template, I don't need to ask Corey anymore, or Slack him and take him away from whatever he's working on at the moment. I can just go to the wiki and then I can find it myself because it's very logical and easy to navigate. So I don't even really need to use Figma at all because, not everyone knows how to use Figma and not everyone wants to deal with another tool. Cool. So yeah, speaking of brand assets, Corey, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, let's click kind of brand assets here. So as I was mentioning earlier, a big pain point is just sharing resources you have with other teams. And what's really nice about Notion is you can create this single database here that we're calling brand assets and share a link to it with other teams around the company. And as you add new images or fonts or logos, they're all going to be available here. You can actually switch to, if you click on images there, you can switch between different views and you can see all the logos, fonts, things like that. So it's super easy to organize. And this is what cuts down on all those repeat requests for the same thing over and over again. So other teams really enjoy having this source of truth and resource available. And let's go back to design and take a look at the design system. So brand assets is a great resource for people outside of your team, but a design system is a great resource for people on your design team. And the difference is this is where we really get into the details of how your company designs. So you could define things like your color palette. Let me take a look at that. So we've actually created a color palette inside of Notion with hex values, color names, and it's a very quick place to reference if an engineer or a designer needs to see what the colors are. We have a nice page about typography, and we're documenting, say we use Roboto as a font, we are showing all the different weights of the font, and Notion lets you upload actual files into Notion. So you can actually upload the font files here and people can download them, install them. Incredibly helpful if you're onboarding a new employee to the design team. You can just point them to this one location and they have everything they need. And on top of that, a great thing about this, keeping a design system in Notion, is it's always up to date and people can know what the status is of things. So if you click into any of these items, you'll see all these properties at the top. So we have last updated, date created. So you can actually see like when this was last updated, and you can even add a tag to it, like a status tag. And you can, if something is out of date, you could actually note that it's out of date. And at that point, people would even know to contact, in this case, Leslie, since she was the owner of Icons. So it solves the problem of many times I've built out a design system and then unfortunately no one uses it because people aren't confident that it's up to date and the most recent. So keeping it in Notion makes it alive and it's living and breathing and it's current. So it brings a lot of confidence to anyone who uses it.
Yeah, this is a great asset. I think and like Corey said, you can decide whether you want to create one design system that's like internal resource for design, plus like brand assets that are maybe like less detailed and just more based on things that you can download for the rest of the company. But it really depends. You can make it whatever you want. So cool. Let's move on to the next workflow. And yeah, like we said, the point of having everything in the same place is that your reference docs that we just talked about, like design system, principles, they really live alongside your day-to-day work. So you want to keep all of your project work here, whether that's docs or tasks or anything else. So what we can do here is start with docs. And yeah, like we'll focus on specs and kickoffs and maybe RFCs, requests for comments, if you use that type of document. And yeah, design projects require a lot of cross-functional work, right, Corey? You may be working on like several projects at once. It's just really chaotic.
Definitely,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, so how to keep everything moving forward and not miss crucial updates for feedback. It's really hard. And you have to figure out, you have to spend a lot of time thinking, okay, what is a streamlined workflow? So one easy way to do this is to just keep it all in a docs database like this. And that can be the same database for the whole company with a filter for just design docs, or you can create a database just for your design team. If we had to give a best practice, Corey and I would definitely recommend keeping one master database for all teams just for maximum transparency. And that's what I've seen has worked for a lot of companies. But it really depends. So if you have like 2,000 people in your company and like you don't want to share it with all 2,000 people, you can just make one for your sub team, your department, etc.
Yeah, Notion is so flexible and you can always adapt to. I think that's the beautiful thing. So whatever works now can always work in the future.
Yep. Cool. So let's look into an example here. Let's choose mobile commenting kickoff. And like Corey was mentioning, you have all these properties up at the top of the doc that you can customize. So for design docs, there's, you want to include certain information that's important. One of them is who was it created by, who's the designer, who's reviewing it, when was it last edited, so whether it's been updated recently. And then you have type here. So again, like maybe this is a design spec or a project kickoff. Right now it's in review. I'll add Corey as my reviewer, and it's high priority. So this is all really customized to what your design team needs. If the engineering team needs to look at different information, then they can change this. And yeah, going into the meat of the actual document. So you can see here there's different sections, right? Like your overview with the problem statement, your success criteria, user stories, scope, etc. And what you're seeing, all of this is a saved template. So Corey, I think I'll have you talk about what database templates are.
Yeah, so if you're on a design team, you're probably creating lots and lots of these product spec docs or design specifications. And it's important to have a process. A lot of teams do have a process. And a great way to enforce that is by creating a database template. So instead of just creating a new page, you're creating a new page based off of an existing template. If we scroll down here, we'll see this page is pre-filled with the structure of what a new design project should look like. And this is really important because it's a nice reminder to designers to follow the process. I know I'm guilty of wanting to get to the fun part, which is designing and picking colors and things like that. But it's really important to spend time doing research and other tasks before jumping into just design. So it's a nice way to reinforce processes. And these templates are super flexible. So you can create any template you want. It could be for jobs to be done, OKRs, KPIs, whatever your team uses. And when I worked at the Wall Street Journal, it would have been super nice to have this functionality because when I joined, we used KPIs, key performance indicators, to kick off design projects and measure their success. And then 2 years into the job, we switched over to OKRs, objectives and key results, which you can see here. And it was a really messy transition because we had been following a certain process and then we chose a new one. So we'd kind of forget that we had this new way of doing things. And having this database template would have been a nice way to remind everyone of the new process and make it really easy too. Yeah, so let's go check out that mobile commenting doc. Another thing I wanted to point out is sharing. So that's obviously the main reason you'd create a doc in the first place, is to get alignment and share it with other teams. And Notion makes that super easy. You can invite groups of people, you can invite external vendors, pretty much anyone, and you can have pretty fine-grained control over who gets access, whether they can comment, whether they can just view. You can even publish pages directly to the web and make them publicly accessible if you need to. Really, the sky's the limit. And if you're at a really big company, our enterprise plan gives you even more fine-grained control over who sees what. On top of the sharing tools, you can also comment directly on these documents. And this is a really helpful feature because you can have a discussion high level at the top of a document, just asking someone to review. But you can also comment in line on any piece of text. So you keep the context, right? So you don't have to say, this is in response to Jira ticket 123 line 72. You're actually commenting on the thing that you're trying to talk about. So you can get feedback in real time and move forward. Yeah, so comments is the thing I end up using quite a bit. And on top of this, we have a very powerful notification system. So whenever Andrea receives a comment or I receive a comment, it'll show up in the all updates section. And at Notion, we kind of treat this almost like an email inbox. We actually don't. I haven't even received an email the entire time I've worked at Notion, which that might not happen, or it could. But it's really nice to be able to track the progress of things in Notion. So you can see across all of these docs, all of the projects where your input is needed in one place.
Yeah, so I also have never received an internal email.
It's kind of I've gotten used to it, but it's the first time it's ever happened to me in my life. So I hope it can happen for more people. Maybe there's some email lovers out there. I don't
know. Cool. Thanks, Corey. So yeah, that's pretty much like an overview on design docs. And now we can move on to the other half of your project work, which is tasks. All right. Cool. So, one of the challenges of design teams, again, is aside from the fact that you have so many different docs going on and so many different projects, part of the reason you have all these projects is because you're probably fielding requests from different teams. So you want to keep all requests in one place so that you can prioritize efficiently. I think that's all that any of us can ask for. So this is like a pretty simple Kanban board. And of course, you can create this however you want. It can be a table, it can just be like a simple checklist, whatever you want. But the nice thing about the Kanban board here in Notion is that you can create different views based on how you're trying to plan, right? So you can do it by status, which you see here. You could do it by priority. You could even do it by designer, just so you can see kind of an overview of what everyone's working on. I've seen that's been pretty useful. And going back to the challenge of improving collaboration with product and engineering, another cool thing that you can do here is link related engineering tasks. So I don't know if you remember, Corey was mentioning like, okay, why do we like have engineering in Jira and then have design in Trello? Like it doesn't make any sense. So what you can do here is under related docs and tasks, you can look for the corresponding engineering task. Right, so under the roadmap, they have a task called implement mobile commenting. So it's just one click really to add that. And then at the same time, like all of those related docs that we were talking about, like your RFCs, your project specs, your kickoffs, again, you want to link it all here so that full context is available. So again, if we look for commenting, then you'll see mobile commenting kickoff. That's the one that we were in before. You can just have it here. So every time you open up the task, you immediately know like, okay, this was all like the reason why we're doing this task is in this document, and engineering has all its specs here. Cool. And then Corey, do you want to talk a bit more about what else you can do?
Yeah, so having these tasks all in one place, engineering tasks, design tasks, is super valuable. And the reason for that is, I can give an example. When I was at the Wall Street Journal, I worked on a project that was redesigning our login and onboarding flow. And at first, it appeared to be a pretty simple design project. We were just going to update the design language, make it a little bit simpler to use. But as we started designing things, we didn't realize the amount of engineering work that would be required to implement these designs. And we quickly realized there was a lot of backend systems and technology that would require upgrading to make these designs work. So what we thought was a small task ended up being quite a monumental effort. And if we had been able to keep design tasks and engineering tasks all in one place, we would have understood more fully like how big our project and decisions were to include engineering. So yeah, it's really important to have one source of truth. And another way Notion helps with that is with embeds. So on this design task here, it's a living and breathing document. So not only is it linked to these engineering tasks up top, but also there's a whole Figma embed here. So we're actually including our entire design inside of Notion, which is super helpful for stakeholders like product managers who are reviewing the progress of things. So you don't have to have a million different tabs open. You're just in one place and seeing everything you need to see. And we also have a whimsical embed down here for a flowchart. And on the same page, fully interactive updates whenever you update whimsical. Another thing that's important is keeping a version history. So throughout this task, we're in this mobile commenting design task. There's going to be a lot of versions, right? I don't think I've ever worked on a project where we designed one thing and then it was just done. So here you can see we've nested pages inside of this task. So we've created design pass 1, design pass 2, 3, and unlike Google Docs, they're all neatly organized and they're in one place, right? Which I like to be organized. It's nice for me to know where they all are, but it's even nicer for others to know where they all are. So it really helps keep everything bundled together and on track with the decision log, so you can really see what's happened. On top of that, every page in Notion has a full version history. So you can go to the sidebar here and see, you can click through minute by minute and see all the changes that have been made and who's made those changes. So you can create your own versioning system, but even if you don't, you can rest assured that Notion is keeping track in the background. And with our enterprise plan, this is even more powerful, and it literally records everything from the beginning of time. So you never have to be worried about making an edit somewhere and losing all of your work, which is nice.
Yeah, that saved me a couple times for projects where like I accidentally make an edit and then I'm like, where did it go? And then it's really easy to just go back here and find it.
I think it also makes like a more collaborative culture just because people are less afraid to propose changes and like contribute, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, Corey, another thing that is great about the enterprise plan that's coming soon is the API, right?
Yeah, I'm super excited about the API. As you can see, we currently are managing engineering and design tasks together, which is already powerful. But when the API gets here, which will be part of the enterprise plan, it's going to be a total game changer. We're going to be able to do things like, say you create a new engineering task, you could automatically associate a pull request and be notified when the code gets merged in, and just it's going to enable so many process improvements. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, I think that's just going to open up a lot of possibilities that like our team hasn't even thought of, right? Because there's just so many things that you could potentially automate to make life easier.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, as you can see, there's a lot packed into one task, right? Where we've like spent this whole time just talking about mobile commenting designs, and it's within this one board, right? So within each of these cars here, you just have literally all context that's relevant to the project bundled together, which makes it just makes for a lot less overhead and a lot less context switching. Cool. So we're already at our 5th workflow. It's been going by pretty fast, but let's go back to our design wiki. And yeah, the last thing that Corey and I wanted to touch on was the use case of sharing public resources. So the last four workflows have all been about like internal communication, collaboration, but we do know that a lot of design teams also need to, of course, communicate externally with either users or clients. So another nice thing about Notion is that it's a very low lift, no code landing page / presentation builder. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but the initial presentation that we had, it's also in Notion. So we don't even use like Google Slides anymore. Like, we just make a Notion page. Um, and, you know, a couple use cases here for using Notion as like a no code landing page builder. One thing you can do is create your press kit or like downloadable templates for users, right? So this one I actually modeled off of Notion's actual press kit. And what you can do is once you've made it, you just go to share. And like Corey was mentioning earlier, all you have to do is toggle on public access and anyone with the link can view it. And then of course you have other things here like search engine indexing, which of course for press kit would come in handy, and other things. So yeah, this is literally what Notion's press page looks like. And I think Corey, you were the one to build it, right?
Yeah, it's we didn't have the resources to write all the code and do all that. So to be able to just toggle on a switch was pretty incredible.
Yeah. And it just takes a lot less time. And then like, you know, you have everything you need. You have the downloadable files. Yeah, so that's your press kit, but there's other ways to make use of sharing publicly. So Corey, do you want to talk about the other one?
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff we focused on is related to doing design or product at a bigger company or a smaller startup. But a lot of designers also work in an agency setting where you have clients, and the most important part of an agency is your client communication. And a big part of that is handing off the final assets that you deliver to them. So we have this client presentations page here in our design wiki. Super easy to locate since it's in our wiki. And we actually have a customer who uses Notion, MetaLab, and they're a very popular design studio. And they use Notion for all of their client presentations and internal product management. So this is what they have in their Notion setup. It's a list of their different clients, like here's Nike at the top. And what they do is they will create a page for each client, and then they would share this individual page with Nike. So now Nike basically has this homepage on the web where they can go every time something gets changed or updated in their project. And the way MetaLab has approached it is they're doing weekly updates. So every week they'll add a new page, and here's the week 3 update. And it's more than a page. It's not just a Google Doc. It's not just an email, because you're able to embed the real work you're doing. So they can actually put Figma prototypes inline, and it's a really nice way to hand off final deliverables to a client. On top of that, typically when you hand off content to a client, it's just the beginning of the process, right? Because there's a lot of feedback and back and forth. But Notion can really help with that, since you can comment inline on the document, and you can have a conversation next to the actual work, which is super nice to do it in context. And you also obviously keep that history, right? So you can kind of go back through each week and see who decided what. And if you get to the end of the project and it's week 102, which I hope doesn't happen, and you have a disagreement about who chose the color at the end, you can probably go back and not blame the client. So yeah, it's a super nice way to keep everything in one place.
Yeah. Yeah, when we interviewed MetaLab, I remember they said like having a page like this where Corey was mentioning, you know, you have everything here and it's accessible to the client, they can like type directly into the page. It just makes it feel like it's more of a two-way conversation, right? Where it's not like a presentation deck that's encased in glass. Like the clients just feel like, oh, we're in a workshop together, we can talk and collaborate. And then the other nice thing is that, you know, you don't really usually, like, agencies probably have to deal with tons of tools. I think MetaLab said they got rid of like 12 tools, from like Google Docs to Slack to PowerPoint and Vision. But the nice thing is that Nike just has to look at one page and like that's it.
Totally. Yeah, it's easy for you to manage internally, and it's also clients really love being a part of the process, I've found. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So that was our last use case. Let's go back to our design wiki so you can just see. Yeah, thank you for watching. Hopefully this was useful. I know Corey and I had a lot of fun showing you around, right, Corey?
Yeah, sorry, I was gonna get one of my design books and share it for story time or something, but I think we're almost out of time. Yeah, I also just want to remind everyone, looking at this, there's a lot of features. There's like a lot of things that Notion can do, and it can be a little bit overwhelming in the beginning. But the way I started with Notion was I started small. I just started using Notion for my personal design tasks. And then one day, another designer on my team was looking over my shoulder and was like, "What is this amazing tool you're using?" And pretty soon there was 2 people using design tasks, and pretty soon we had a design wiki. And before you knew it, engineering was in there too. So start using Notion for yourself, and if you find it useful, it's likely other people on your team will join in.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think it takes some time sometimes to, get people used to a new tool, but once you're all together in the same place, then it just becomes even more powerful. So yeah, I just want to end by giving you guys a couple more ways to get some information because we know we just threw a lot at you. So a couple ways to get more info. One is to go to notion.so/enterprise. I know Corey and I talked a little bit about what that plan includes, and it's definitely like the ideal plan, especially if you're like a 2,000 person company. So go to that landing page. And then of course, if you can always reach out to us over email. So sales@makenotion.com. And someone will be in touch with you right away just to talk more about what plan might be the best approach for you. And yeah, we'll send additional resources like case studies and tutorials, etc., over email. So yeah, that's the end of our demo. Thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you all so much. See you on Notion.